And I have to start recording. Awesome. So today we have Ms. Nisha Sardella, and she has been at Marks Education, a counselor since 2009, and leads the graduate school admission counseling service. I've known her for a long time now, I want to say. And she works with candidates for law school, business school, medical school, and post-bac pre-med programs, as well as with applicants for graduate academic degrees and fellowships. A lot. And Nisha concentrated in social studies at Harvard University. She also received her JD from Harvard Law School. She served on the local, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. And advocating for students with special needs and the programs and policies that affect them. And she also serves on Harvard Schools and Scholarships Committee, interviewing candidates for undergraduate admission. So welcome, welcome. And then we also have Alex Coakley, who joined the Marks Education as an essay editor and researcher in 2019. She came to the role with 6 years of experience editing in digital media and 9 years of experience working with students of all ages as a writing tutor. And she is now a history PhD candidate at the University of Berkeley, where she looks forward to working with more undergraduates and helping students to improve their writing in the next academic year. So welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. Alex and I would love to learn something about every one of you guys, just so we can sort of know who we're talking to. So if there's, no pressure situation, but if you could just, I can read your names, but if you could maybe tell us what your favorite class you've taken so far is. It could be anything you've taken maybe in the last 5 years. And then if there is a graduate school that you're interested in applying to, not the specific school, but like the program or just a general area, if you could tell us too, that we would love to hear that. Clarissa, do you want to start since you're already being brave?
I'm Clarissa. One of my favorite classes I've taken. Okay, I just finished my freshman year of college, so surprisingly, one of my favorite classes was this screen studies class that I took, and I don't know what graduate program I would want to go into.
It was a film class?
It was a screen studies introductory course, and
I was studying film.
Yeah, and I actually ended up liking it a lot more than I thought I would.
I was social studies, so really, nothing related to arts in college, but I did a portrait class, so I had to go to museums and look at portraits, and that was one of my favorite classes because it really took me out of what I was deep into with philosophy and economics and into just appreciating something different. So I think that's great you did that.
Next on my screen is Elena.
Hi, I'm Elena, and a class that I took that I liked could be like this medical class that I was taking at Kennedy. I really enjoyed it a lot. So, because it was showing what the human body and stuff like that, and I like stuff like that. So, and then for grad school, I really don't have one in mind yet to where to go. So.
Okay, we have 2 Rebeccas, so which one's going to go first?
Hi, I'm Rebecca. One of my favorite classes that I took was probably AP Government, and something I want to study for grad is law.
Okay, other Rebecca.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Hello. Oh, we can hear you now.
Okay. One of my favorite classes I've taken is probably U.S. history. And something I want to in grad school, I want to go into pre-med.
Rebecca, I'm a US history PhD student, so that's also usually my favorite class. And now that's all the classes I take.
Rebecca, what year are you in college?
I'm not in college.
Oh, you're still in high school. Okay. I was wondering. Okay, Jacob, you're last.
Hi, my name is Jacob. A class that I found really interesting and fun was photography. Actually using film and being in the darkroom and seeing your photos come to life. It was I found it really interesting. As for graduate school, I'm still unsure.
Great. Okay, this is fun because it's some people have a really good idea and some people are just open, which is also really fun. So Alex and I have made a little PowerPoint presentation. It probably is nowhere near what you guys could have done in your free time, but we did our best. So
Hold on, it's been a while since I have done screen sharing accurately. So give me 1 second. Let's see. I think. Let's see. Can you all see that on your screens?
yeah,
Okay.
yep, that works for us and for me at least. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So we just made a list of some, the most common graduate schools that people tend to come to us for help with. Obviously, law school, medical school, master's degrees, business schools are definitely the most common, but we also have some people who are looking for executive MBAs, which means later in their career, they're looking for sort of the higher level skills in a shorter time. And then of course, PhDs like Alex is doing right now. But just those are sort of the most common different paths. Someone in the questions asked about PA, physician's assistant. Was that someone here or was that someone else? No one here. Okay, that's a different path too than medical school, but also very interesting and something that we have worked with before. Do you want to go to the next slide, Alex?
And feel free to stop us if you have any questions while we're going through these too.
Do you want to go through this one, Alex?
Sure. So someone asked how to choose the right grad program for you. And I think the best way to start, obviously you're all at different stages in your education and your academic career, but Nisha and I were talking about it, and we think one of the best ways to start, no matter where you are in your education, is to make the most of what you have available to you in terms of figuring out what path you might want to explore by connecting with other people, by joining different clubs, by participating in different activities, taking classes that you might not ordinarily take. A lot of you mentioned that your favorite class was something that you didn't expect to really like. So that's a really good example, I think, in this group, that taking a class outside of your wheelhouse can be a really great way to start thinking about what you really want to do and whether a grad program might be right for you, and just to explore different types of subjects. And then I think once you're certain that you want, or you're thinking that you have a particular degree that you might want to do, the important thing definitely is to take core courses. In addition to those courses where you're exploring more and trying new things, is to take core courses. If you think you want to go to med school, you have to take organic chemistry, right? If you want to go to law school, it's important to try and take a political science course, something with moral reasoning. And all graduate programs typically, and Nisha, you can correct me if I'm wrong, want to see that you are taking courses that are challenging you in writing. So I think that's a really important thing. Most graduate programs want to see strength in writing. And then of course, business school, you'll want to do something in finance. If you haven't done these things, Nisha, you can speak more to this. Let's say you really change your course after college and you think, I didn't take a lot of finance and economic classes, but now I'm really interested in getting a business degree because of the professional experience I've had. You can take post-college programs that would help you beef up those skills afterwards.
Yeah, and the same with medical school. So if you decide that you don't have the time or the energy or just change interests during college and can't do it, you haven't done all your pre-med requirements, you can do something called the postdoc degree, which is a way to get your pre-med requirements in the years after college. I actually had a very good friend in undergrad who did that very successfully and said it was easier for her because she could dedicate her time to those pre-med classes, which were so challenging, and then sort of enjoy her college time and have time to do everything else she wanted to get done during college. So you don't have to do all this during college. There are ways to work around it, but it's obviously ideal to be able to explore some in college what you were hoping to do after, so you see if you actually enjoy it.
Right. I think then also the most important thing, and this was true for me very much, is to get some sort of professional experience after college. That was really essential for me. I actually was accepted to a program for international relations I decided to apply for an international relations program in my senior year of college because I became really interested in it while I was in school. But I realized I had never done an internship in Washington, D.C. I didn't know anything about diplomacy. I'd never done it. I had never received any professional experience in it. And so I went to work for a think tank in Washington, D.C. While there, I got really interested in journalism. And then I started merging my love of history and journalism. And so it really changed my course. I decided that getting a PhD was what was right for me. And so having that professional experience not only gave me professional experience that I can carry with me after my graduate program, but also professional experience that really put me on a different course that I discovered was more right for me. So I think that getting some sort of professional experience once you've sort of explored what avenues you're excited about will really help you determine what graduate school path is really the right one for you, and to have more time to think about it as well.
Okay, this is a very dense slide.
Very text heavy.
Yeah, but it's what you get because we love to write. So often people ask, what's the most important thing for graduate school? What are graduate schools really looking at? And so it's not just one thing. Just like when you apply to college, it's not just one thing, right? You can't just have good grades or good test scores, have one good day on the ACT, and that's going to make up for never working hard on school, or spend all of your time in school and not doing anything in the community. You need to have a balance. But so for graduate school, obviously academic history is relevant, and they want to see not just your grades, but also the courses that you're taking and the context. Some colleges are known for grade inflation. And so everyone has really, really strong grades there. So maybe your 3.8 at college doesn't mean as much as it would at a different school, which has harder grading typically. So nothing you can really do. I wouldn't choose your college based on how the grades are there, but I would at least be aware that at this school that I'm going to now, it's a little bit harder to get great grades, or everyone seems to be getting A's. And so I need to make sure that I have other ways to stand out beyond my wonderful GPA. And the thing that I think is really relevant there is when you're applying to certainly the bigger schools like, law school or other schools where there's lots of students from your undergrad who will be applying, is that you're going to be compared to them, just like you are sort of seen when you apply to college, how your high school experience is seen within the context of everyone else in your class. So if everyone's doing something and you do the same thing, you might not stand out as much. Whereas if you're doing something different or sort of taking your own path, something that you're really passionate about, it might be seen as more special or noticeable for the admissions committee. And this is the one thing that it's most important to remember in college, is that the worst thing that you can do is to start out really strong in your freshman year and then go downhill. So, starting with A's and then sort of getting a little bit lazy and or not working as hard, or being distracted by everything else that's cool to go on at college, and then having poor grades towards the end. That's really hard to overcome because it shows that you're not as enthused about academics anymore. Whereas if you have a tough freshman year or even a tough sophomore year, and then you kind of figure things out and figure out how to balance the social, your work demands, school, everything, and have a much stronger junior and senior year, that's seen very favorably. That means that you struggled and it was hard, but you figured it out, and in the end, you overcame the challenges and you're ready for graduate school next. So there's a big difference in that. So it's not just your GPA, but sort of what the trend is and how it's seen in the broader context. And then just like when you're applying to college, your activities and your work matter. how do you spend your time while you're in college? And then what do you do during your breaks and after college? If a lot of students are working a lot during college to afford the college experience, you're not expected to do that and be the president of 3 different clubs and do everything else. You just need to pick one activity on campus that you're really involved in if you're working a lot outside of school as well, but something that shows that you're involved in the community, so that when you join the graduate school community, you'll also be a good member of their community and give back and be someone that's going to contribute beyond just being in the classroom every day. Testing is another component, just like with when you're applying to college. The thing about graduate school is it's not just 1 or 2 tests to choose from. There's a number of them. The MCAT for medical school, the GMAT or the GRE for business school, the LSAT or the GRE for law school, and then the GRE for many of the master's and other programs too. The trend across all of those, you'll notice, except for medical school, is the GRE usually works. It might limit your options a little bit with law school, but generally, if you're sort of thinking about professional school, the GRE is the one to take if you're not sure. And if you're not considering medical school, because that medical school, you need the MCAT. There's no question there. The thing about these tests is they're good for 5 years. So if you take a GRE in your junior or senior year of college, when you're still in sort of academic mode, you can use that to apply to graduate school 3 or 4 years down the road, and it would still work. So a lot of students who are planning ahead will do that, and then be able to have that sort of out of the way later on. And then the final thing for graduate school applicants, beyond obviously the essays and the whole application package that you actually turn in, is recommendations. For everything but business school, you're going to need professors to write recommendations for you from undergrad. And typically it's good to have 2 that you can plan on. For medical school, you need more, but that's a whole different bag again. And if anyone's really interested in medical school, I'd be happy to talk with you for 20 minutes at a different time and sort of talk through that process, how you can plan now. But sort of thinking about those relationships while you're in college is very important. So if you could take 2 or 3 classes from one professor who you really love, that's ideal, because then they'll get to know you. Or if you're writing a thesis with someone and you're really working closely on research, that would be a great person to recommend you if you do well. Just someone who really gets to know you and thinks that you're smart and hardworking, and they can sort of talk about your growth in their class, or your passion, or how you sort of came to office hours and made an extra effort for them. That would be the ideal person to write a recommendation for you. And you can ask for that recommendation ahead of time, even if you don't know where you're applying to school. You can say, I'd like to bank a recommendation for later on. I've loved your class, the way that you help guide me in this, that philosophy argument, or this paper, or enrich my ability to understand something else. If you kind of tell them what you loved about it, it would make for a really good recommendation, because then they know what you're looking for as well. And the same with professionally. If you have a summer job where you do really, really well and you really feel like you sort of nailed it, you can ask them for recommendation just to bank for later. Similarly, once you graduate, if you're thinking actively about mentors, like who can you go to for help, who's interested in you and invested in you, and then put some extra time into that, to seeking them out to ask advice and help, and then there'll be someone who's set up to write your recommendation later on. That was a lot of information. Do you have any questions about that? No? Okay.
So this was also true for my graduate school journey, my application process. So someone asked us what the hardest part is. And I think that for a lot of people, it's definitely applying for graduate school while you are also working a full-time job, or you have a full course load because you're still in college. I think that, and I didn't follow all these rules myself, and I sorely wish I did. So I think that the most important thing is to really space out all the things that you're going to have to do, and to do a lot of the legwork ahead of time. As soon as you know that you were thinking about applying to graduate school, just get on those school websites and program pages and take notes, figure out what's going to be required, start thinking in your head what components of the application will be needed, and you can have that sort of checklist in your mind really early on, and then you can, I think, time manage all of those different steps over a longer space of time. So you won't be, cramming it in at the very last minute. Take the GRE or the LSAT or the GMAT or whichever entrance exam is appropriate as soon as you, I think we actually recommend taking it your last year of college or right after. I waited and I wish I hadn't. I think when I was younger, I had much more of a tolerance for standardized testing because you're trained in high school to take standardized tests, and I lost that skill as I got older. So I had to work a lot harder to do well on the GRE. And then, one thing I would add to something Nisha already said about the recommenders is that my recommenders were really also professors who were my actual mentors in the process of making my applications and deciding what was right for me. They were people who at the end of my undergraduate education, I was interested in going to graduate school, and I asked them lots of questions about what they thought, what their advice was, and I stayed in touch with them throughout my professional career before applying to graduate school, and I kept them updated on, what I was doing, what my accomplishments were, how I was changing in terms of what my goals were, and I think that was really helpful for them in terms of writing. They had written a recommendation letter for me when I was an undergrad, but they were able to adjust their recommendation letters for me, later, 5 years later, and update it with new information about how I had changed and where I was at. So I think that is a really important thing to do, is to use your recommenders, not just as recommenders, but also as mentors in the process.
Yeah, and maintaining that relationship is very important. And any teacher will tell you they love to hear from their students later on. So you're actually kind of doing them a favor if you send them updates every so often on what you're up to. I took this film class as a freshman. I loved it. It was so cool. Examining art, whatever you're doing, if you send little updates and sort of how you're thinking about them or something you learned in their class, that's not kissing up. That's just that's being kind. The people invested a whole year or more time into you, and they love to hear what's going on after.
Definitely.
Okay, so did someone here ask about what makes a good resume? No? It was a good question. I liked it a lot. Maybe I'm just not seeing everyone. But okay, so there's two parts to a resume. Well, there's many parts, but there's two key factors in a resume. One is sort of the content, right? Like just like in a paper, what you're trying to say is important, but also the second part, how do you say it? How do you present it? I've seen a lot of good resumes where there's just great material, but I can't read it because it's all packed in there so small, or I can't get over the fact that there's half of the sentences have periods after them and half of them don't, and it seems like the person's just not that careful with little details on this one piece of paper, and then I worry, are they not going to be able to have attention to detail for something else that is a more important task later on. So I think that obviously it's really important to think hard about what you're going to put on there and the content and how you describe your activities and your education and all that, but also make sure that you put it in a way that's visually appealing. So when someone's trying to gather that information about you, they can see it without being overwhelmed. And then there's something else that Alex and I talked about, which is the personal section. I think is really nice. I don't know if I think we'll show you a sample in a little bit, but having some personal details at the end about who you are as a person outside of professionally, outside of academically, like what do you enjoy? Do you enjoy, going for runs by the monuments in your free time? Or do you like to hike? Or is there a sports team that you love and you sort of follow them even though they're sort of not what you would expect? Or are you the proud older sibling of 4 younger brothers or sisters or something like that? Is just some little detail about your life that might sort of enrich the person who's looking at resumes, their view of you, without something that otherwise they would have missed because they don't know it from just looking at that paper. So there's 2 examples there. One is when I interviewed for Harvard undergrad, I had a student a couple years ago who put on her personal section that she could solve the Rubik's Cube in 22 seconds. And I thought that was really cool because I also like Rubik's Cubes. I actually have one on my desk right now. It's something that I'm nerdy about and I like to do with my children. And so I happened to have one in my bag and I was so excited. So I pulled it out and I gave it to her, a normal one, not one of these funky. It wasn't like this. It was like a normal Rubik's Cube. And she couldn't solve it at all. And she told me she could solve it in 22 seconds, but she couldn't even solve it in like 5 minutes. She was panicking. So that was not good. That meant that she was so nervous that she couldn't do it, but that didn't really make sense to me, because if you can solve it in 22 seconds, I think that it's something that's sort of in your brain. So that was not good. And that was something about her personal thing that she shouldn't have said, because it wasn't true. And anything you put on there, you need to be able to back up and be honest. On the other hand, I had a medical school student applicant a few years ago who had on her resume that she was a nanny for 3 children under age 3 for 2 summers in a row. Both parents were working full time out of the house, and she was caring for 3 children under age 3, and I guess the next year under age 4. And then when she was applying to medical school, she said, "Oh, let me give you the edited resume," and she took it off. She took off that detail. But it turns out she wanted to go into pediatrics. And I said, why would you take off the fact that you cared for 3 children under age 3 for a whole summer by yourself, managing all that, when you want to go into pediatrics as a doctor? Yeah, that's not, being a nanny doesn't sound like it's, medically related, but think about all the care she was doing to care for these children and all the knowledge she gained. So I think sometimes people edit themselves, either trying to make themselves sound fancy by adding a detail about 22 seconds in Rubik's Cube. Okay, that's not good. Or they edit themselves saying, oh, but I was just a nanny. That's not like a fancy job. That was I was just helping out my family friend, and then I came back the next year and did a good job and did it again. So you want to think hard, like what's relevant for what I'm applying to, whether it's a job or a graduate school or anything. And then, of course, am I being honest and true to what's actually my experience, so that if I am questioned about it, it's accurate and interesting to talk about? Because people see little details on their resume, like if you love to run and you write about how you trained for a 5K or something like that, people want to talk about that if they also like to run. And that should be a positive. You should be excited when they ask about your personal details. Do you have anything to add, Alex, to those?
Yes, I think another thing that is really important, and this is something whenever a friend gives me their resume, the first thing I look for is I look for those job descriptions, and we'll show you an example, which I think is really good. But I look for, when you're describing what position you had and what you did, the thing that I'm really looking for is, how did you improve, change the organization, take on some sort of leadership role? Leadership is really important, and that can be, having leadership experience can be a range of different things. Did you spearhead a project? Was it your idea to do something? Did you change the way a program was done at the position that you had? Something to that effect. So we'll go ahead and give you an example. Hold on, I'm gonna stop.
And Alex, that can be, I'm thinking about our friend here who is working in a restaurant on the weekends.
Yeah.
If she thinks of a better way to manage some kind of process in the restaurant, and she can write that on her resume, that is amazing. It doesn't need to be, changing a process in a business or some kind of huge company. If you can just make things better for the people that you're working with and, understand how to improve that, that's something that's great to put on the resume. Just describe it in simple words, what you did. And I actually have had students who've worked at restaurants and said, oh, I was named the best busboy of the summer, something like that, that's exactly the kind of thing you should put on there. And if you can say why, because I, figured out a better method for this or that, then great.
Yeah, and I think that usually when I'm working with someone on their resume, usually it's not that they didn't have some sort of experience where they were a leader, or where they changed something or they made something better. It's just that they hadn't thought of it in that sort of framework. And so once you start thinking about your work experience in that framework, it becomes really easy to think about, okay, well, how did I really help the organization that you work with, which probably you contribute to in really positive ways, right? So it tends to be pretty easy once you get the hang of it.
Yeah, and it can be good to go into each experience thinking about how you're gonna, what could I write on my resume about this? And so you sort of plan ahead and think, how can I make things better for the people? What can I do beyond just my job description? Obviously it'll look good on my resume later, but it'll also feel really good when I'm doing that job, that I'm not just doing what they tell me to do, but I'm thinking about how to make it better.
Okay, so we have a sample resume here. Can you all see this again?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I highlighted a couple things that I really liked about this resume. So here, develop strategies to mitigate reputational risk and ensure OFAC, FCPA, and other regulatory compliance. Oh, sorry, that's just one bullet point. Okay, it's the next bullet point. Excelled during in-depth firm training, including corporate finance, accounting, and basic financial modeling. So I love a verb like excelled, right? Because she didn't just participate in these things. She became better at them, and was key to those activities. Here's another one that I thought was great, but slightly different. If you can describe what your role was, and why it was unique, I think that is also a really important thing to do. Fulfilled a cross-functional role through a variety of outreach and organizational self-led projects. Nisha, would you agree with that? That's describing, if you didn't just do one type of thing, your job actually, you have a job description, a job title, but actually your job requires you to do a lot of complex tasks where you are managing different types of people, or you're connecting to different areas of an organization. That's a really important thing to point out. And then
yeah, and this resume is a little bit unique because it's someone who's applying to JD MBA, which means she was trying to go to a law school and business school simultaneously. So we had to squeeze a lot of stuff into this resume, and she was also just one of those unique, sort of all around, really highly accomplished students. So this resume is probably more packed than I would like, but I use it as a sample for my students often because she has such a range of experience, so you can pick out the things that might apply to you. But let's look at this last, the My College. Can you go to like the My College one?
Yes.
So here, this person for a summer was a communications manager at a student-run startup. And I love how she says that she managed customer outreach, user feedback, and marketing materials, and authored the website and blog content. This was only a summer, but you can really see what value she added in that startup role for just a summer. And you don't need more than one line for that because that was years ago. That looks like that was the year after she graduated high school. And she's had lots of experience since then, including at Goldman Sachs, very like fancy job. But it's worth having that little job at the beginning there to show, even back when I was just graduating high school, I really did add some value to to a student-run startup.
Yeah, that's a really good point, is to think way back to, I was a writing advisor at my college library, and I actually got a lot of really important experience there. So I always keep it on my resume, even though I'm now 10 years out of college, because that was where I really gained my love for counseling other students. And so it's important to me to have it on there so they can see, how long this passion has been part of my life. And so I just absolutely loved her personal.
Yeah, that's why I said that one.
Okay, so professionally trained chocolatier and product designer, designed an innovative original confection called the Raisie, which was marketed nationally, thousands sold, awarded #2 favorite on Food and Wine magazine's top 10 chocolates. I mean, this is a really incredible personal detail, because of course, this is the type of thing where if you were to have, if the person is going to want to Google this immediately and then order some and eat them. But I think it's also, that's just a really incredible thing that is a really great conversation starter, I think, and you just want to know more, right? So if you have a personal detail like that, don't be afraid to share why.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that you were given an award for this.
Sure.
It could be that you make the world's best whatever dish it is, or people just, your friends always want you to bring that dish when you're coming over to their house or something like that. Any little detail like that, or maybe you love to try different, street food in New York City or something like that, and street food connoisseur. But anything sort of little detail that people want to talk about, it was really great to have on there. I also wanted to add to you said that you always keep on your old experience, Alex. One thing I always love to see on resumes is stuff in the service industry. So restaurant work, working in a department store, anything like that you've done is great to have on there, because everyone knows how challenging that work is. And even if you've gone on to do different things, more career-focused jobs later on, keeping on that service industry job really shows someone that's flexible, that knows how to accommodate other people, how to work long hours on your feet. So I think it's good to keep those types of jobs on there. And I often encourage my students, even if they worked at Goldman Sachs or other fancy jobs later on in life, to make sure they keep the other jobs on there that show what a hard worker they are and just the depth of their experience. So just before you start deleting stuff, as you progress throughout your college career and after, think about what's on there that sort of shows the whole person that you are, and how and what you've learned in your different experiences.
And then one final thing on presentation, anytime I ever give my resume to someone to look over, they always find like a style inconsistency, or so it's always good to have at least a couple people take a look at it, because you won't notice the sort of errors that you're making, but someone else will always catch them. So always have somebody look at it if you make changes to it as you're applying.
Yeah, someone that is willing to be critical of you, even if they think that your experience is really good, who's going to look at those little details for you. Does anyone have any resume questions so far? Does anyone have a draft resume they want us to look at? No one, everyone's horrified by that idea.
Well, I was going to jump in with a question about resumes then. What do you do when you see a resume like that seems kind of intimidating compared to yours? Like, I mean, I saw all of our eyes light up when we were like, I don't want to share my resume, right? I see heads nodding. This has happened to me before too. Mm-hmm. So like, what would you advise a student in that case?
I think that, well, one, bear in mind that kind of resume I've sort of assembled together. It actually it's a real student, but I kept a bunch of stuff in there because students who are then applying can pick and choose what they want, right? They're not going to have all these different experiences as this one sort of magical student who had it all lined up perfectly. That's sort of unrealistic goal. So you can sort of pick and choose who you are. But the most important thing is to really think about the full range of your experience. For the student who shared that she was, working during the week and then also working at the restaurant on the weekend, if you can find a way in your resume to show that you're doing both those jobs at once, that is great. And you're not necessarily going to have the full range of experience of being so much younger and, not having, this person had been working for years and years. But the fact that you can show that in the summer between, during the academic year and the summers off, you were working 2 jobs and doing different things and keeping really busy. That's really important. And sort of highlighting the struggles, the challenges that you've faced and how you've overcome them and how you've managed to balance different competing demands. It's really important and really good to show that. And then, of course, framing, just like I said before, framing your work in that context, whether it's working at a big fancy company or interning at a student-run organization or working at Kohl's. Like my stepson has been working at Kohl's this summer, and that was really challenging for him because he was on his feet. I get Apple Watch notifications from him, and so he would burn like 1,000 calories running around Kohl's stocking the shelves all summer. And of course, that's not as great as being a politics major at George Washington University, which is what he does during the school year, but I guarantee that he got amazing people skills, and it's going to help in his political career that he can work at Kohl's and stock the shelves and run around all day. And when he goes to get a job on Capitol Hill in the next couple of years, they're going to see that and really appreciate that he did that work too, and manage it and did well and is invited back the next year. So I think that's important to sort of view it as the stepping stones that you have and how what you're doing now can sort of help for the next step, the next summer or the next year or whatever you're trying to do. Alex, do you have anything to add?
I see there's 2 new people that we didn't get to meet, Dominique and Caroline. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves? And we just all went around and said if you're interested in what your favorite class is so far, and then if you're interested in graduate programs, which graduate programs you might be interested in.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I am currently in my junior year, going into my junior year at Hood College in Frederick, Maryland. And I'm a law and criminal justice major with a minor in sociology. Favorite class? Probably, oh my God, criminal law or American con law.
That's awesome. So thank you. My name is Dominique Tucker. I am one of the new counselors working with CDI. And so, I'm just trying to think about, I was a psychology and anthropology and sociology double major with a focus in behavior. And what was my favorite class? Probably, it wasn't Psych 101. ABA. So applied behavior.
Wendy, what was your favorite class? You're not off the hook either then.
Yeah.
I was like, don't worry, you guys don't have to ask me. I was trying to think about it. So I was a sociology and anthropology major, and I actually pursued my master's in nonprofit management. So, but I'm gonna go back to my undergrad. I want to say my favorite class was the anthropology of suffering. I know it was a very depressing class because we talked a lot about genocides, and just how different cultures suffer. And although it was a depressing class, I got to learn a lot about cultures. So very interesting.
I like how so many people have shared classes that weren't sort of going along with their major, or they had to think about it hard to sort of think about what they most enjoyed. And I think that's sort of the beauty of college, and something, graduate school is a time to specialize, and college is really a time to explore. And I think that's what people in graduate school want to see, is that you've explored in college and you haven't just, focused in on only the business classes because you want to be a business, person later on in life, but you sort of looked at different things. And taking psychology would be great for business, right? Or taking writing classes is great. Understanding law and ethics is really important for business as well. So I think taking that full range is really important. And also, it's just fun, right? My favorite classes, I always sort of knew I wanted to go to law school. Of course, I'm not practicing law now, and I haven't for many years, but I thought that was such an interesting path, and I really knew I wanted to go that path for a while. But again, my favorite classes were that portrait class I took. I took a class on vision and the brain, which I loved. And then a bunch of random history classes, which I don't even remember the details anymore. Like I took one on Charlemagne and one on Indian history. My mom is from India, so that was really interesting for me. But just the way that it sort of enriches your overall perspective and the things you learn, and sort of feeds your curiosity, and things that you're actually going to spend time reading about and loving later in life, even when you have a different career. Alex, what was your favorite class?
I was just going to say, so this last year was my first year as a PhD student. I'm a student at Berkeley, but I was on Zoom school, and they have the history PhD at Berkeley is very interdisciplinary focused, and so they really encourage you to take classes that are outside of the history department. So in my very first semester, my favorite class that I've ever taken was on civil rights law, the history of civil rights law, and now because I took that class, so it was half law students and half history students, and we were reading case law, which I'd never done before, and then looking at civil rights historians and looking at how social movements intersect with the law and change the law and vice versa. And now I think that socio-legal history is going to be one of my thematic fields in my PhD. So it was a really important class for me, and I learned so much.
Does anyone have any specific questions? I mean, we have time, and if you have, you can just get any advice you want. Is there anything that you're wondering about for your own graduate school path or for college, of what you can be planning on in college to set yourself up for success later on? Activities that you should be doing in college? Do you have a good idea of that?
Or does anyone have a question about specific, if you're thinking about getting an MBA, or if you're thinking about going to law school, any specific questions about the application process for that particular degree?
Everyone feels shy. Well, I think we have to go around then, and we're going to ask more questions because I want to learn more about you then. So now we talked about favorite classes. I want to know what the favorite sort of activity you've done, not for work, not for school, but sort of activity that you've done outside of work and school that you've loved the most. And I can start with mine if it makes it easier. I've always sort of loved sports, but I've not especially talented, except that I work really hard, and so that has helped a lot. But in college, I played field hockey, and I was the JV goalie at Harvard, which I loved. Doesn't serve any purpose for anything except that it was just really fun. And I really love some of my friends from the JV field hockey team, where we sort of, rented a bus together and drove ourselves to the different games. That was one of my favorite things I did because it was just pure fun. And I met these other women who also, like me, were, pretty okay at sports, but not going to make the varsity team and not going to be like well known for being the best. But we just really liked it and worked hard and did it because we enjoyed it. So when I think back to college, that was one of my favorite things I did just purely for fun. Didn't serve any purpose other than and really having fun with other people and enjoying it.
I'll go next. So I live with my best friends, and one of them plays this piano, and I like to sing while he plays. And I'm really sad because I'm moving now because we're going back in person in Berkeley. And so I think I'm going to take piano lessons. I can kind of play by ear since I sing, but I've never actually taken real lessons. So that's my goal for this year.
Okay, Elena, what do you do for fun? Just pure fun.
On the weekends, me and my parents, we like to go to the park and play baseball. We're not good at it, but it's good for exercise, so we like to go play.
That's really fun. Are you gonna try to play on a like a intramural team or something in college or?
I'm thinking about it, so it's on the list.
I feel like sports are such a nice way to, I mean, just like music and performing arts too, it's such a nice way to meet people that you wouldn't otherwise interact with. And sort of you make such good friendships so quickly because you're doing that one thing together. What about you, Wendy? What do you do just for fun? Or what did you do in college just for fun?
That's such a good question. I gave up on field hockey after the third knee surgery. So yes, I know. It's the best high school experience. But no, so yes, I did have to give up sports after that. So in college, I actually just enjoyed getting to know different cultures. So I did go to UMBC and they're pretty diverse, but I took time just rotating through different like culture clubs. Like I know they had like Black Student Alliance, a Latino club, and like they would just host different events. And I just like always try to find myself like trying to make time to go to those different events. And did a lot of service whenever I could. So loved getting to know the Baltimore community. So I was born and raised in Montgomery County, so that was actually really fun. But now I continue to do a lot of service in my new neighborhood. So just like doing pickup trash. I get my daughter to do it with me too. As many of you know, she's no longer a baby. I see some of my college students on here and I'm like, she's no longer a baby. She's now 4. So she actually goes out with me and we'll go do different activities, especially now, like during the summertime. So still enjoy doing the service part. Fun.
Anyone else want to volunteer? You guys aren't having, oh, there you go.
I'll go. I mean, I like exploring Frederick. I think Frederick is pretty nice. But when I'm not doing like anything college related, we used to go to Hagerstown, which is not that far, and get donuts. Yeah. And then, or go to TJ Maxx or Marshall's or any other store nearby and do adult things. Yeah.
See, I love all this stuff because whether it's, playing baseball in the park or, going to Hagerstown for different donuts or whatever, these are things that can go on the personal section of your resume and be cute little conversation starters. Obviously, if you're doing organized service work or an organized team sport, that's different. And maybe you put that under an activity or something. But the little things that you do just when you have a day off or a free time or the books that you read, all those things are actually really important, sort of part of who you are. And people who are reading your resume want to know that. Does anyone else want to share something they do for fun, just not because it looks good, but just because they enjoy it? Jacob, do you have any fun?
Recently this month, like for fun, it's just been exploring Mexico. Right now I'm in Mexico right now. So every day my family is going like somewhere new.
Which part of Mexico are you in?
I'm in Cuernavaca. Yeah. So about a week ago, we drove like for 4 hours to Acapulco, and then we're gonna be planning to go to Oaxaca soon. So we're just like exploring like all of Mexico. So it's been fun.
How long are you there for?
I'm gonna be here for another 20 days.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
That's amazing. Clarissa, do you have any fun?
In high school, when you mentioned it, I used to also play field hockey. So that was my like favorite part. I met a lot of like, I feel like that was what helped me like adjust the most to high school because it was like a fall sport. So you kind of get like a head start on meeting people. So I really enjoyed my time playing, and I ended up playing almost full year round. I joined like little leagues around like when I wasn't like in my like technical school season. But in college, I think because I went away, I got like interested in yeah, just like touring the different cities. So I moved to Worcester to like live on campus. Luckily my school was open. So I explored like little parts of Worcester, Mass. And then we would take like when we could, since we didn't have like breaks, we would just have like wellness days. So we would take some days and go off to Boston. And I got to finally go to Boston and explore the city. So that was cool.
Does anyone else want to share? No? Rebecca's are being quiet. Dominique is being quiet.
I would jump in and say, so I know we have some high school students on here and some of you haven't started on your resume, but I know like college students, you guys went through the resume process with CDI. And it's just so fascinating to hear that when we do the high school resume, like going into undergrad, they tell you not to put down your interest, right? Like you avoid putting those on there. And so just wondering if like you've ever had that case, like where you work with students and, you know, we tell students so much, we're like, no, like you can talk about it, but like, don't put it on your resume, like, right? Like just stick to your experience and your activities. And then it's just very interesting to hear the other side where in grad school things change.
Yeah, well, I think that when you're applying for jobs too, after college, it's nice to put in some personal details because so much of it is, you know, you have education and then you have work and then maybe community service, but then just something at the end that just makes it personal when you're having an interview or just something, you know, now I know little details about some of your lives and it's really, I'll remember you that way. I'll remember that Elena plays baseball with her parents, which is such a cute little detail, or that Clarissa also enjoyed playing field hockey. Or that Jacob's having an amazing trip to Mexico and exploring new things and the 4-hour drive. Like what a cool little detail. Like I want to know more about that. So I think those are the things that get you sort of noticed and help you stand out. Obviously there's less and less room for fun as you get older. We sort of expect that in high school that, you know, obviously it's challenging. You're trying to balance a lot, but a lot of you don't have responsibilities like you do when you're in college, and obviously not like when you graduate. So how do you what do you do when you have that time to yourself, which is rarer and rarer to have? How do you carve out that time for yourself and sort of what makes you who you are? I think that's important for graduate schools to know so they can picture you on campus. And then beyond, you know, in a job, if it's not just that you're going to go to work every day and do your work and go home, it's like, what are you going to talk to your coworkers about when you're not talking about the work? Or, you know, what's interesting about you and what are you going to add in terms of diversity to the room, and not just diversity in terms of your experiences, but in sort of your interests and your passions and all that too. So I think those details are really nice. You obviously don't want to go overboard and overshare everything, right? You don't want to say that, you know, you love sampling. Well, this is actually a bad example, because actually if you were like a beer connoisseur, if you're over 21 and you enjoy, you know, sampling different local beer or something, that would be okay. But you don't want to like look like you're someone who just parties all the time or has fun. You want to make sure that it's professional sounding, even in your personal interests.
Speaking of, I had a friend whose Fulbright application I helped edit, and it was for the UK, which was a really hard Fulbright. If anyone's applied for Fulbright, it's really hard to get a UK Fulbright, and she got it. And her personal detail is that she loves beer and was excited to sample beer at all the local pubs. I think that one thing, especially, this is really true with Fulbright especially, is that one thing that the personal detail adds is it helps the person who's reading your resume kind of picture what what type of community member you're going to be, you know, how you might bring other people into that community with you, you know, how your interests will be shared with others. And in England, they love going to get beer. So it really made sense for that one.
Yeah, and I have seen some things which I don't like students will say, oh, I love to travel. I've been to like, you know, X number of countries. I know, Alex, you say your boyfriend loves to travel, right? So I think you have to be careful, like when you put it, that you're not just bragging about like, oh, I've done so much of this, but I want to see content, you know, like favorite country visited is Bosnia is much more interesting than I've been to 60 countries. And then because someone can say, you know, avid traveler, like favorite country was this, at least it's a little detail that, or,
Yeah,
you know,
detail.
Something that actually is going to spark your interest and someone will remember you by. So yeah, I think it's, you can, that sort of thing, like, oh, is this an okay detail to share? That's where you sort of have to ask your family and your roommates and your friends and sort of say, what do you know about me? Like, how would you describe me? What's a sort of fun detail that you think that I always talk about that I could share here? I think maybe they can help you with that too. Siblings are often great. They're brutal, but they're great to giving those details too.
Alex, I know you mentioned Fulbright. Can you talk a little bit more about what Fulbright is?
Sure. It's a fellowship that there's two different types of Fulbrights. There's a research Fulbright that you can apply for. And I think you're eligible for Fulbright many years after college. It's something that you can apply for after having many years of professional experience, but it's a fellowship that allows you to do a cultural exchange with another country through the State Department. And you can teach English in that country, or you can do research in that country. So the student who I helped with her application, she was going to be doing research in chemistry at, I forgot which institution it was, but Fulbright has a partner institution. So she connected with a professor at her partner institution and is now doing a year of, or was doing a year of chemistry research with that professor. But there's also English teaching ones where you just go and you teach English in a different country. And they are really exciting and fulfilling experiences for the people who do them. Yeah, it's a really fantastic program.
Yeah, there are lots of different options for things to do after college, and I really encourage you to make use of your college advising offices to see what they offer and see how your college will offer guidance for you. Obviously, CDI is a great resource too, but if you go and seek out resources at your own university or college, they know what other students are doing in your position. And they can connect you with students who've, you know, oh, this person was also an anthropology major and they went on to do this and they were successful there. So you can talk to them. So I think that you really need to open your eyes to all the different resources that you can access and talk to and see. But one thing I always advise, for example, for medical school, I always tell my students who are applying to medical school, I can look at your medical school list with you and sort of tell you what I think based on your, you know, MCAT score and your grades and your activities, like what would be good schools for you. But the best place to start is to go to your pre-med advising office or find professors who've taught you pre-med classes and say, where have students with my kind of profile gone successfully from my college? What medical schools like students like me? And that's really unique to yourself individually. Same with law school, same with business school. What kinds of schools, which schools in particular, have liked and accepted other students from my undergrad, same major, similar profile, because then you have a better idea of where your success will be too. And then you can get help from us or from anyone else for sort of the strategy, but at least you have an idea sort of where to start in research. And then of course you can talk to students who've done that from your university. I know always people are willing to help out people who are going on the path with them, after them and talk about their own path and what they might do differently and what was worked really well.
Do we have any other questions? I know we have like about a minute left. Any thoughts? Are we all going to grad school? I can't do it again, but you guys can definitely go.
Talk to Alex. She's in it right now.
Yeah.
And she's working.
Yes, I've had a great time so far. So I can't say that I can't not recommend it yet.
Well, I'm happy I'm here. I'm not going anywhere from Mark Education. So if you guys have questions, just reach out to me and I'm happy to help. Seriously, anytime I can chat with you for 5 minutes and sort of answer any questions, I'm always happy to do that. One thing that people find really helpful, and I'm always happy to answer, is if you're thinking about, activities during college. Same thing I was talking about. Like, what could I be doing to make sure that I'm getting the full experience and not just the academics and picking classes, but what I should be doing outside of college in my community to learn and grow. So if you're sort of weighing different options or thinking about stuff, and you want to think about it in the graduate school context, I'm always happy to help with that too, because it just makes life easier down the road, right? If you've done that planning when you're earlier on in your career.
Well, thank you so much. It is time to go. Yes, thank you so much. And Mark's Education, always from tutoring to now presenting. We really appreciate you and all that you do for our scholars. So I will see you all.